Picture this. You walk into your corner office on a Tuesday morning, 22 years of hard work behind you, and by lunch, you're getting a phone call that destroys everything. Your six-figure salary? Gone. Your identity? Shattered. Your family's future? Uncertain. This happened to David Rivera at 45. But what he discovered in a landscaping truck 6 months later would completely redefine what success actually means. You're about to see exactly how a man went from corner office to dirt under his fingernails, and why he's never been happier. If you've ever felt like your job title defines who you are, if you've ever wondered what would happen if everything you built just disappeared overnight, this story will change how you see everything. Because sometimes losing what we think makes us valuable reveals what actually does. David Rivera wasn't born into wealth. He grew up watching his father work double shifts at the factory, promising himself he'd never struggle like that. By 45, he seemed to have won. Regional sales director, corner office, six-figure salary, overseeing 30 people across 3 states. The house in Westfield was everything David had dreamed of as a kid. 4 bedrooms, 2-car garage with his BMW and Sarah's SUV. His wife could stay home with their 16-year-old daughter, Emma. The mortgage was hefty, but manageable. Life was secure, or so he thought. March 15th started like any other day. David's alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. He showered, put on his favorite navy suit, and grabbed the travel mug of coffee Sarah had prepared. As he backed out of the driveway, he waved at Mike Park, who was already loading his landscaping truck. At 10:47 a.m., David's phone rang. His boss's voice was different, careful, measured. "David, I need to talk to you immediately. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. We're restructuring the entire division. Market conditions have forced us to eliminate several positions, including yours. This is effective immediately." The words felt like they were coming from underwater. 22 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and relentless dedication erased with a phone call. David sat in his BMW in the parking lot, hands shaking as he called Sarah. A cardboard box of personal items mocked him in the passenger seat. Security had escorted him out within the hour. "Hey, honey, how was your morning?" Her voice was bright, unsuspecting. "David," he began, then couldn't find the words. "How do you tell the person who depends on you that the foundation just crumbled?" The numbers were unforgiving. $4,200 mortgage, $800 in car payments, $2,300 minimum credit card payments. His severance would last 3 months if they cut everything. Maybe 4 if they sold the BMW. But what was David without the BMW? Without the title? Without the corner office that had defined him for over 2 decades? That evening, David faced his family across the kitchen table. 16-year-old Emma asked innocently, "Dad, you look weird. Are you sick?" "I lost my job today." The silence was deafening. Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. Even Emma looked up from her homework. "What does this mean?" Emma asked, her voice small. "Do we have to move?" David didn't have an answer.
Sarah's expression shifted through multiple emotions. Surprise, concern, fear, then determination. "What do you mean you lost your job?" she asked, her voice tight. "You've been there for over 20 years. They eliminated my position. Budget cuts. But you said you were secure. You said telecommunications was recession-proof." David had said that many times. He'd been so confident that his experience made him untouchable. The first month was frantic, activity masking growing panic. David updated his resume, reached out to his network, applied for dozens of positions. Someone with his experience would be snapped up quickly. But the market had shifted. He was overqualified for some positions, underqualified for others. "We're looking for someone with more recent digital experience," became a familiar refrain. Each rejection email felt like a judgment, not just on his professional worth, but on his value as a person. The savings account was draining fast. Should he touch the 401k? The penalties would be brutal, but what choice did he have? By month 2, the bills were stacking up. David sat at the kitchen table at 2 a.m., surrounded by mortgage statements, credit card bills, and utility notices. The numbers stared back at him, unforgiving in their mathematics. Sarah had started looking for work, but after 15 years out of the workforce, her options were limited. Lying in bed, David could feel her awake beside him, staring at the ceiling. "Maybe I should have kept working," she whispered one night. "Don't do that to yourself," David replied. But he wondered the same thing. 4 months in, David was avoiding neighbors, declining invitations, making excuses not to attend Emma's school events where he'd face other parents with their casual questions about work. He'd started telling people he was consulting or exploring new opportunities. The lies came easier each time, but left him feeling hollow. The breaking point came when David was rejected for a position that paid 40% less than his previous job. "We felt you were overqualified and would likely leave as soon as something better came along," the hiring manager explained. Overqualified. The very experience that had once been his greatest asset was now his biggest liability. That afternoon, putting garbage cans back after pickup, my neighbor Mike Park approached me. "Hey, David, haven't seen much of you lately. How's work treating you?" My first instinct was to deflect, but something in Mike's genuine concern broke through my walls. "Actually, Mike, I've been out of work for 4 months now." Mike's expression shifted to understanding compassion. "Man, I'm sorry. That's rough." Then Mike said something that would change everything. "Listen, I know it's not your field, but I've got more landscaping work than I can handle. Spring's always crazy busy. If you want to make some money while you're looking, you're welcome to help out. Pay's not glamorous, but it's honest work." My pride recoiled. Landscaping? Manual labor? Everything he'd worked to rise above. But then he thought about the mortgage payment due in 2 weeks.
That night, David sat in his home office, surrounded by awards and certificates from his corporate career. Sarah found him there at midnight. "Mike offered me work," he said without looking up. "Landscaping." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "David, you know I don't care what kind of work you do, right? I fell in love with you when you were waiting tables to pay for college." He'd forgotten that. In all the years of climbing and achieving, he'd forgotten who he'd been before the titles defined him. Monday morning, David met Mike at 6 a.m. Instead of his usual suit, he wore old jeans and a t-shirt. Instead of his BMW, he climbed into Mike's work truck, filled with tools and possibility. The first client was in the wealthy hills, the kind of neighborhood David had aspired to live in. As he knelt in the dirt pulling weeds, he wondered if any neighbors recognized him as the former executive who used to own a similar house just miles away. By noon, David's back ached in ways it hadn't since his teenage construction summers. His hands were dirty, clothes soaked with sweat, every muscle protesting. But something unexpected was happening. For the first time in months, his mind wasn't racing with anxiety about bills and interviews. There was something meditative about the simple, clear task: make this yard beautiful. During lunch break, Mike and David sat on the tailgate eating sandwiches. "You know, I used to be an accountant." David nearly choked. "What?" "Yeah, worked downtown for 8 years. Hated every minute. Sat in a cubicle, crunching numbers that didn't matter to anyone. Had a nervous breakdown at 32. So you started landscaping." "Best decision I ever made. I sleep better, I'm healthier, and at the end of every day, I can see what I accomplished." There's something to be said for work that makes the world more beautiful. That first evening, David came home exhausted, but oddly peaceful. Emma was doing homework when he walked in, still dirty from the day's work. "Dad," she said, looking up, "you look different." "Different how?" "Less worried, I guess." She was right. For the first time in months, David wasn't carrying the weight of uncertainty. He'd made $120 that day, a fraction of his former hourly rate, but it was honest money for honest work. Weeks turned into months. David continued working with Mike while still applying for corporate positions, but something had shifted. The desperate edge to his job search had softened. He was more thoughtful about what he actually wanted, rather than what he thought he should want. The work was teaching him things no boardroom ever had: patience, humility, the satisfaction of creating something beautiful with his hands. 6 months after losing his job, the family was having dinner. Simple spaghetti with marinara, nothing fancy but made with love. "Dad," Emma said, "Sophie's dad got laid off last month and he's really depressed. Won't come to school events, barely talks, but I was wondering if maybe you could talk to him. You went through the same thing, but you seem okay now. Actually, you seem happier than before." The observation hit David like a revelation. He was happier, not because of what he'd gained, but because of what losing everything had taught him. The life he thought was success was actually a kind of prison. Golden handcuffs that kept him tethered to a version of himself that was never really him. The corner office, the salary, the BMW, they were symbols he'd mistaken for substance. What was substance? Coming home dirty but peaceful, teaching his daughter about resilience through example, not lectures, having dinner conversations that mattered because they weren't interrupted by work calls.
Today, David runs a small consulting business, helping other professionals navigate career transitions. He kept working with Mike on weekends because he genuinely loves it. The physical challenge, creative problem solving, immediate satisfaction of transformation. The Westfield house? Sold. They found a smaller place with a big backyard where Sarah started a vegetable garden and David built a workshop. The BMW? Gone. Replaced by a reliable Honda Civic that's paid off. The credit cards? Paid down through careful budgeting and a newfound understanding of wants versus needs. But here's what David gained: himself, the person he'd been before titles and salary consumed him. Someone who found joy in simple things, valued family time over meeting time, understood that worth isn't measured by possessions, but by who you become. Most importantly, David gained perspective. He now helps other displaced executives discover that their identity crisis might actually be an identity opportunity. His consulting practice grew from his own journey because he knew exactly what his clients were experiencing, because he'd walked that path from corner office to dirt under his fingernails. The devastating loss that felt like the end of his story was actually the beginning of a chapter he never could have written otherwise. David learned that sometimes the universe takes away your good to give you your great. His former colleagues, still climbing corporate ladders, often ask how he's handling his situation. David smiles because they assume he's settling for less, but he knows the truth. He's finally living more. The man who lost everything at 45 didn't just start over, he started better. And that's the lesson David learned. Sometimes losing what defines us reveals what we're truly meant to become.
Thank you for joining me for another story here on The Turning Point. David's journey reminds us that sometimes losing what we think defines us reveals what we're truly meant to become. Your greatest strengths often emerge from your deepest wounds, and sometimes the universe takes away our good to give us your great. What have you lost that felt like the end of the world? What failure or setback made you question everything you thought you knew about yourself? Maybe you're in that dark place right now, wondering who you are without the thing that used to define you. But here's what I want you to consider. What if that loss isn't the end of your story? What if it's actually the beginning of a chapter you never could have written otherwise? Sometimes losing what we think we need reveals what the world actually needs from us. If David's story moved you, I'd love to hear about a time when your deepest wound became your greatest gift to others. Or maybe you're still in the silence, still discovering what voice might emerge from your struggle. Leave a comment below and share your story. Your turning point might inspire someone else who needs to hear it. And if you're ready for another powerful transformation, watch out for our next video. We drop a new one every week. Click the video above or check the link in the description. Don't forget to like this video if David's journey resonated with you, and subscribe for more weekly stories where loss becomes purpose. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a turning point that could change everything. Your purpose might be waiting on the other side of your pain. I'll see you in the next video.